So today we are going to start with economics, and economics has a weightage of 10% in your CFA level 1 exam. 10% means you have, let's say, 90 questions asked in the first session and 90 questions will be asked in the second session. So out of total 180 question, 10% is your 18 questions. So 18 questions you'll be getting from economics, and economics will be asked in second session. That's clearly defined in CFA exam. Now, many of you are engineers, many of you are from science background, and you'll find it little challenging to understand economics. But let me tell you one thing, economics is all about common sense. If you're trying to understand economics through graphs and charts, your life will become a hell. Rather, in CFA, what they focus on application of economics in capital market, in finance. We are not bothered about the theories of economics, but rather we'll focus more on the application part. But certainly for understanding the application, we have to understand the theoretical perspective also. But understanding and mugging up the theory is not going to help as far as application of economics in finance is concerned. So if you're kind of a person who wants to study through graphs and charts, and then you're looking at different diagrams, so economics, let me tell you, is based on assumptions. So once those assumptions are violated, then theory becomes invalid. So in economics, you'll find a lot of challenge as far as assumptions are concerned. In daily life, then again, you're applying the concepts of economics, then you'll say, sir, there are so many exceptions. And why these exceptions are there? Because economics is based on assumptions. So let me tell you, when we'll be studying economics, we'll take a broader view, we'll look at the broader picture. We'll not get into the nitty-gritties of economics theories, but rather we are going to focus on application of economics in finance. Now, as far as the syllabus of CFA, economics in CFA level 1 is concerned, it is divided into two parts. The first part is of microeconomics and the second part is of macroeconomics. In CFA, the major focus is on macroeconomics. They don't focus much on microeconomics because microeconomics is valid for individual consumers. But if you're trying to look at this broader picture, and if you're trying to look at the whole economy, then mostly macroeconomics is going to play a major role. So for macroeconomics, they have given 2 readings. And for macroeconomics, there are 5 readings in CFA level 1. So our focus would be on macroeconomics, but still, I would like you to understand the basics of economics first. And many of you who have studied economics in class 11th and 12th might find it very boring when I'll be doing the basics of economics. But it is important for me to cover the basics of economics so that everybody comes at par. So the people who are not from commerce background or the people who are not from economics background, at least they should understand what exactly we are discussing. So in today's session, I'll be focusing more on the basics of economics, right? And I'm damn sure the people who have studied economics in class 11th and 12th who are from commerce background or who have done economics honors, they'll also commit certain mistakes when I'll be doing the basics of economics, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the basics of economics, right? I'm not going to define what is economics and all, but rather I'll start the discussion with, and today what we are covering, let me tell you, we are going to cover read. So the first reading which we are going to cover today is topics in demand and supply analysis. And I'm going to start the discussion with law of demand. So let us first understand what is law of demand. Law of demand says that demand is inversely related to price, right? So when I'm saying demand is inversely related to price, so what I mean to say, when price rises, demand falls. And here I'm talking about quantity demanded. I'm not talking about quantity supplied. So what I said, demand and price is inversely related. So when price rises, demand falls. And when price falls, demand prices. So how do we write this equation? Now I have got two options. Either I can write it like this or I can write it like this. You'll say, sir, both are correct. But the question is, which equation is more correct, right? So for this, we have to understand something called cause and effect relationship. Cause and effect relationship. Always remember, price is the cause and demand is the effect, not vice versa. So if price is the cause and demand is the effect, what do you think? Which relation holds? This one or this one? Which is the correct explanation of law of demand? This equation or this equation? So I'm saying price is the cause. So I'm saying here when price rises, demand falls. Makes sense. When price falls, demand rises. Makes sense. But see here what is happening. I'm saying when demand falls, price rises. Is it valid? No. So when less of the people are demanding any commodity, do you think prices are going to rise? Not at all. According to this equation, then what happens? I'm saying when demand rises, price falls, but it doesn't happen like this. So you cannot define law of demand using this equation. This equation is invalid because what is the important point here? You need to understand the cause and effect relationship, right? And what is the cause here? Price is the cause and demand is the effect, right? That is what we call something called causality relationship. What is the cause? Because of change in price, demand is getting affected. I'm not saying here law of demand never says that because of change in demand, price is getting impacted. So the correct definition of law of demand is that you need to understand which is the cause and which is the effect. So price always remains the cause and demand is the effect. Here it is not valid. So this is not the correct equation for law of demand. This is not a equation, this is inequality, right? So law of demand, I hope it is clear to all of you, because even if I'm asking this question to a class 12 student, he'll say, sir, dono to same hi hai. Both are same. But this is the correct equation. And cause and effect relationship is important for you to understand, right? So this is about law of demand. Okay. Moving on to the next section, which is elasticity of demand. So now I am discussing the next section, which is elasticity of demand. And before discussing elasticity of demand, so what I said, demand is inversely related to price. I'm not saying price is inversely related to demand. This is incorrect. This is correct. Now, how price and demand is interrelated to each other, that will be determined by something called elasticity of demand. And first, I'll be discussing own elasticity of demand. The first concept is own elasticity of demand. Own elasticity of demand means we are talking about price and demand of same product. So if price of onion rises, right? So if price of onion rises, its demand falls. I am not talking about price and demand of two separate commodities. Here, the price, if price of one commodity rises, then what is the effect on demand of the same commodity? That is what I'm calling here as own elasticity of demand. Now the question is, what is elasticity of demand? So elasticity of demand says percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Let me tell you one thing, this percentage change in quantity is of demand and this percentage change in price. Here when I am writing percentage change in Q, it means I am talking about quantity demanded. When I am talking about quantity demanded, I am taking consumer's perspective. Remember what I said? When I'm talking about quantity demanded, I am taking consumer's perspective, right? When I'll be talking about quantity supplied, I'll be taking producer's perspective. So first I'm discussing the entire concept from consumer's perspective. When I'll be talking about quantity supplied, I'll be taking producer's perspective. So here we are discussing from consumer's perspective. So what is elasticity of demand? Percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Now, most of you who have studied in class 12th, if I ask you, how will you calculate percentage change in quantity? So if let's say Q1 is the initial and Q2 is the final. Let's say this is the initial demand and this is the final demand. So how will you calculate percentage change in Q? Most of you will say, sir, Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1 into 100. And what is the logic here? Final minus initial divided by initial into 100. But generally what happens, if you're taking this approach, you are ignoring the fact that during the entire year, maybe there is a possibility that the quantity demanded has fluctuated so much. So initial figure might be very low or the final figure might be very high. But during the entire year, there have been so many changes, there have been so many fluctuations, and those fluctuations are not getting incorporated in this calculation part. So when I'm calculating percentage change in quantity, how I am going to calculate Q2 minus Q1 divided by average. And how will you calculate average? Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. I am not going to see the change over the initial figure. I am going to see how much it has changed over average demand during the entire year into 100. This makes more sense because I want to see कि चलो भाई जो भी change है demand में compared to the average demand, how much change is happening. That makes more sense for me. Similarly, if I have taken percentage change in quantity like this, so how I'm going to calculate percentage change in price? This will be also similar. P2 minus P1 divided by P1 plus P2 by 2. This is average into 100. So that is how I'm going to calculate my percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price, right? So this is for you to remember, because you might see when they're doing calculation, they'll be doing calculations like this. So don't get confused. In class 11th and 12th, we did it like this, but this is not the correct method because we want to see how much change has happened over an average change in a particular year. That is of major concern to us rather than looking at the final and initial figure. Because if you're taking final and initial figure, it might happen that the initial figure is too low and the final figure is too high. In between, there was not much change, right? So in order to remove the effects of outliers, we are following this approach of calculating percentage change in quantity and percentage change in price. So I said own elasticity of demand. Now, from a layman's perspective, what does it indicate? If I'm saying elasticity of demand is 2, what does it mean? So how do we calculate? I am saying this is my formula, percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. I am saying price has gone up by 10%. Because of increase in price by 12%, demand is falling by 20%. Then in this case, how much is my elasticity of demand? 2. What does this 2 indicates? This 2 indicates that if price rises by 10%, demand is falling by 20%. Or it can be like this also. If price is falling by 20%, demand is rising by 20%. This will also give you a figure of 2. So what we can say with this figure of 2, that quantity demanded is twice as sensitive to the change in price, right? So because of 1 unit change in price, demand is going to be impacted by 2 units, right? So we can say that demand is twice as sensitive to the change in price. Now, if you see, elasticity of demand is always negative. Why it is negative? Because percentage change in price, and this is my percentage change in quantity. If this is going up, this is going down. This will be negative, this will be positive. Or if you write it like this, then if this is going down, which means what? This is negative, then this will go up, this is positive. So by definition, elasticity of demand is always going to be negative. But my concern is not looking at the negative side. I am looking at the numerical value, because the elasticity of demand will be always negative according to law of demand, because demand and price is inversely related. But my major concern is I want to look at this numerical value, and this numerical value makes more sense for me because I already know that price and quantity demanded have inverse relation. Now, elasticity of demand, if I am saying elasticity of demand is 0, what does it mean? This is my percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price, which means what? even if the price is changing, price is going up and down, there is no impact on quantity demanded, and that is why elasticity of demand is zero. So it means what? There is no impact of change in price on quantity demanded, which means what? This is something called perfectly inelastic. Why we are calling it perfectly inelastic? Because the price change is not going to have any impact on quantity demanded, right? So in this case, what I'm going to say, quantity demanded has nothing to do with the change in price. Even if the price is going up and down, quantity demanded is stable. It's not changing. So when elasticity of demand is zero, what we say that demand is perfectly inelastic. Now, how to draw this on a diagram? So I'll show you what happens whenever you're drawing this kind of a diagram. Your quantity demanded or supplied is always on x-axis and your price is on y-axis. Then I'm saying this curve will be like this. This is not a curve. I have drawn this as a straight line. This can be a curve also. What does it indicate? If you look at this, my initial price was P1, quantity demanded was Q1. When price has fallen from P1 to P2, what is happening? See here, price has fallen from P1 to P2. Quantity demanded has increased from Q1 to Q2. This downward sloping curve actually indicates what? It indicates that there is an inverse relation between price and quantity demanded, right? So demand curve is always downward sloping. Now I am saying elasticity of demand is equal to zero. And then I said it is perfectly inelastic. So what it means here, this is my quantity and this is my price. So how I have written elasticity of demand is equal to 0 percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price, right? So even if the price is changing, there is no change here. So what I mean to say here, even if the price is changing, quantity demanded is constant. Can we draw it like this? This shows ED is equal to 0. देख रहे हो बच्चे? Price change भी हो रहा है, बढ़ भी जाए, quantity demanded is same. So that is how we draw diagram of a perfectly inelastic demand. Okay,
Notice.
so moving on to the second point, which is ED is equal to infinite. Now, why ED will be infinite? So I'm saying the formula for ED is percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. So what does it mean? Even if the quantity demanded is changing, or rather I'll say even if the price is not changing, there is no change in price, the price is constant, but still the quantity demanded is going up and down. So something divided by 0 becomes infinite. Now you'll say ki how it will happen even if the price is not changing, why quantity demanded is going up or down? It happens, right? But again, there is nothing called perfectly elastic in this world. This is perfectly elastic. Perfectly elastic means what? This is highly sensitive to change in price. Even if the price is not changing, quantity demanded is changing. So even if the price changes by a small percentage, there will be a huge impact on demand. That is what they are trying to convey with this perfectly elastic concept. So perfectly elastic means what? Even if the price is not changing, there is an impact on demand. But if the price changes even by a small percentage, there will be a huge impact on demand. That is what conceptually perfectly elastic says. So if we have to draw the diagram of perfectly elastic, how will you draw? This is quantity and this is price. Can we draw it like this? Price is constant. At this price also, say this is the price P1, quantity demanded is Q1. If the price is again P1, quantity demanded is becoming Q2. So your price is constant, but quantity demanded is changing. So this is the line for perfectly elastic demand. So what we studied till here, we studied two things. One is your ED is equal to 0. When elasticity of demand is 0, we say that it is perfectly inelastic. And when we said ED is equal to infinite, what does it mean? It is perfectly elastic. Then what is the difference between inelasticity and elasticity? Elasticity means your demand is very sensitive to change in price. Inelasticity means it is not so sensitive to change in price. That is the difference between elasticity and inelasticity, right? Whenever you heard this word elasticity, it means what? It is sensitive to change in prices. Inelasticity, it is not so sensitive to change in prices. If it is zero, then you'll say that it is not at all sensitive to change in prices, right? Quantity demand will remain the same even if the price goes up or goes down, but only when it is perfectly inelastic. When I am using this word inelastic, it means what? It is sensitive but not so sensitive to what's change in prices. So again, I'll say if ED is greater than 1, greater than 1 means what? This is my percentage change in price, this is my percentage change in quantity. So if price is going up by 10%, demand is falling by 12%. So here my elasticity of demand is 1.2. So because of the 10% change in price, the proportionate change in quantity demanded is not 10%, but it is higher. So what I'm going to say here is that the demand for this product is elastic. This product is sensitive to change in prices, right? So if the price is changing by 10%, demand is going to change by more than 10%. So that is why we are calling it elastic. If ED is less than 1, then what we'll say that it is inelastic, which means what? If the price is changing by 10%, quantity demanded is going to change by less than 10%. And if ED is equal to 1, we say that it is unit elastic. So because of change in price, there will be a proportionate change in quantity demanded. Rather, there is an equal change in quantity demanded in percentage terms. So these are the 5 categories, right? So they have defined ED is equal to 0, ED is equal to infinite, ED greater than 1, less than 1, and then ED is equal to 1. But what is the most important thing for you to consider here is that what is the difference between elastic and inelastic? Elastic means sensitive, very sensitive to change in price, and quantity demanded is sensitive to change in price. Inelastic means not so sensitive to change in price, not so sensitive to change in price. Now this is the background I wanted to give you before moving forward, because if you don't have this background of economics, you'll not be able to understand what they are going to discuss further in the textbook, right? So now I'll come to the textbook and see here they have started with own price elasticity of demand. What is the meaning of own price elasticity of demand? So if I'm saying percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price, what does it mean? I am taking quantity and price, quantity demanded and price of same commodity. We are talking about same commodity, right? And what law of demand says that there is an inverse relation between demand and price. We have discussed why this curve is downward sloping, right? Because there is a inverse relation, and then they have discussed the different diagrams. We have already discussed perfectly inelastic, perfectly elastic. We have already discussed, right? Now I'll discuss few more concepts, then I'll come to the textbook again. They're talking about now related goods. What are related goods? The first category is of substitutes. The second category is of complementary goods. I'm just taking an example which you have studied in class 12th also. Coffee and tea are substitutes. Tea and sugar I'll take as complementary good. Right? Now, what we are saying here is when this is my when price of coffee rises, what do you think? What will be the impact on demand of tea? Is it going to go up or go down? So what happens? These are substitute goods. So when price of coffee rises, there is a possibility that many of the people will switch to tea. So demand for tea will rise. But this is not own price elasticity of demand. Here we are talking about two different commodities. We are seeing the change in price of coffee, and then we are seeing what is the change in demand for tea. This cannot be covered under own price elasticity of demand, right? This is a different concept which I am going to discuss later on. Cross price elasticity of demand, that also I'll discuss. Okay, now you'll tell me, is law of demand valid here? There is a direct relationship between price and demand. And why it is not valid here? Because we are not talking about same commodity, we are talking about two different commodities, right? If you see tea and sugar, why we are calling it complementary? Because if price of tea rises, sorry, if price of sugar rises, demand for tea is going to fall, right? Because sugar complements your tea. Now, some people will say, sir, there will be no impact on demand because most of the people in India are diabetic. So there are a lot of exceptions, and all these are debatable topics. So economics is full of exceptions. So when price of sugar rises, demand for tea falls. But here law of demand is valid. But still, I'll not say that law of demand is valid here, because law of demand generally applies when we are talking about quantity demanded and price of same commodity. Is the spelling of tea correct here?
Yes,
Even
sir.
Yes, sir.
I have forgotten the
Yes.
spelling of tea also.
Totally correct.
Because while teaching economics, all these things happen. Okay. Now, see why I'm discussing all these concepts, because there are some students of economics, science, and they find it very, very tough to understand the concepts of economics. So we have discussed about related goods, and later on we'll be studying substitution effect and income effect. Everything we are going to discuss. Before that, before discussing related goods, let's move on. So what are the factors which are going to affect elasticity of demand? The सबसे पहला point what they are saying is portion of income which is spent on a good. What I am saying, if your income is 10,000, if your monthly income is 10,000, out of this 10,000, you are spending 100 rupees on purchase of onion, right? Out of your total income, how much you are spending on onion? This is 1%, right? If your salary becomes 1 lakh, are you going to purchase more of onion? I don't think so. Still, you'll be buying onion worth rupees 100 only. Now, how much you are spending here? You're spending
0.1%.
0.1%.
0.1%.
Now, my point is, if you are spending, let's say 30% out of this 10,000, you're spending 30% on a particular item, which means what a major portion of your income is being spent on a consumption of a particular commodity. And if the price of that commodity rises, obviously its demand is going to fall substantially, because you're spending a major portion of your income on that commodity. So obviously you have to cut down your consumption, otherwise your salary is not going to fulfill all your other needs. So what I'm saying, if you're spending a major portion of your income on purchase of a commodity, and if its price changes, definitely there is going to be a high impact on its demand. So this particular portion says what? If you're spending a major portion of your income on purchase of a commodity, its price sensitivity will be much higher, right? So what happens if rental price goes up? If you're spending 30% of your income on house rent allowance or house rental, and if rental goes up, so obviously you have to cut down your rental expenses, otherwise you'll not be able to meet your other expenses. So if a major portion of your income is being spent on a purchase of a particular commodity or consumption of a particular commodity, and if its price changes, there will be a substantial impact on its demand. But if you're spending a very small proportion of your income on consumption of a particular commodity, तो मान लो आपका सैलरी पहले 10,000 1 लाख था, and you're spending only 100 rupees on purchase of onion. So even if your salary goes down to 10,000, still you can easily purchase onion worth rupees 100. So any commodity or any good on which you're spending only a small fraction of your income, so its demand is not going to be impacted that much. So elasticity of demand depends on how much you're spending on consumption of a particular commodity. Higher consumption or major proportion of income spent on for consumption of that commodity, its price sensitivity will be higher or its elasticity will be higher. If less proportion is being spent, its elasticity of demand will be lower. As simple as that. The second thing which they are discussing is time factor. Elasticity of demand is generally higher in the longer run. Why we are saying so? Let's say sometimes what happens, let's say your electricity, you're consuming electricity right now, and the cost of electricity goes up. But it is not possible for you to immediately cut down your expenditure on electricity. Maybe over a period of time, you'll slowly and steadily try and cut down on your expenditure on electricity, because it is not possible to cut down immediately, right? So in a longer frame, if price of in a longer period, if price of electricity rises, there is a possibility that its demand will go down, but not immediately, but over a period of time. So time is also one of the important factors, right? In a longer time period, the quantity demanded of any commodity or any good will have higher elasticity as in the shorter run. So these are the two factors they have discussed which are going to have an impact on elasticity of demand. Now, another way to calculate elasticity of demand. How you have calculated elasticity of demand here? Percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Okay, this is one method. The another method to calculate elasticity of demand is like this. What I am saying, ED is equal to lower segment divided by upper segment. Lower segment divided by upper segment. This is my price, this is my, ठीक है. एक पॉइंट ये है, एक पॉइंट ये है. Let's say this is A, this is B, and this C is the midpoint. This is D and this is E. If I want to calculate ED here, ED at point A, what is the formula? Lower segment divided by upper segment. A के लिए lower segment क्या है? पूरा ये line, this entire line is the lower segment for A, right? So lower segment अगर आप लेके चलो तो क्या बोल सकते हैं बच्चे? This is A. इसके ऊपर there is no upper segment, so A divided by 0. This becomes infinite. So ED at A हमने क्या बोला? Infinite है. Infinite कहने का मतलब this is perfectly elastic. Point B पे ED at point B. What is lower segment for B? BE, this entire BE. What is the upper segment? AB. Which is greater? Obviously, B is greater than AB. So here we are saying what? This is greater than 1. Greater than 1 कहने का मतलब क्या हुआ? This is elastic. If you calculate at the midpoint, C पे निकालो तो कैसे निकालोगे बच्चे? इसका lower segment C, upper segment is AC, and since this is the midpoint, this becomes U. This becomes 1, which means what? It is unit elastic. At point D, how will you calculate? Lower segment is D, upper segment is AD. Obviously, numerator is lower than denominator. This is less than 1. So less than 1 को अपन क्या बोलते हैं? We call it inelastic. At point E कैसे निकालेंगे? इसका lower segment तो कुछ भी नहीं है, 0. Upper segment is entire AE. So this becomes 0. And this is perfectly inelastic. Obviously, this entire calculation was not required, but why I did it deliberately so that you understand from where it is coming. The most important point here for us to understand is why we are doing such calculations and what is the relevance here. So if you see this entire diagram, what I have done, This is price and this is quantity. This was my line. Here your demand was perfectly inelastic. फिर इससे थोड़ा सा ऊपर मैंने क्या बोला, it is inelastic. Then here it was unit elastic. Then here we said it is elastic. And then here we said it is perfectly elastic. Can we say that as price rises, elasticity is going up? जैसे जैसे देखो price बढ़ रहा है, आपका elasticity भी बढ़ रहा है. कहने का मतलब elasticity totally depends upon price. At higher price, you will have higher elasticity. Why? Because what happens at higher prices, when the price is rising to such an extent, then people become very sensitive to change in price. जब तक plane का fare 3,000 या 4,000 में people are very comfortable. The moment it reaches 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, people become very sensitive to change in price, and obviously they have to cut down their demand. They would not like to fly when the rental is or when the airfare is 10,000 or 11,000. In the range of 4,000, 5,000, they're okay. But the moment price rises to 10,000 or 11,000, obviously they'll drop the plan of flying through air, right? Rather, they'll go for an alternative mode. Maybe they'll take train. So what I mean to say here is that at higher prices, you will have higher elasticity. This is the application point part I was trying to make it clear to you. So as price rises, elasticity also rises. And the logic is also very clear. अगर मान लो एयरलाइंस का फेयर 2000 है, 2000 से बढ़ के 4000 हो गया, फिर भी लोगों को ज्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. बट आप देखोगे जैसे 4000 से 10,000 पहुंचेगा ना, मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल विल shy away from flying through airplane. Why? Because at higher prices, people are very, very sensitive to changing prices. Okay. Now I move to the second point, which is income elasticity of demand. अभी तक हमने क्या डिस्कस किया? We discussed own price elasticity of demand. And what was the formula? ED is equal to percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Here we were talking about price and quantity demanded of same commodity. But if they are saying income elasticity of demand, so what does it mean? So what is my income elasticity of demand? Let us understand this point. Income elasticity of demand means percentage change in quantity demanded because of percentage change in income. So when people's income changes, what is the impact on quantity demanded of a commodity? That is what we are calling here as income elasticity of demand, right? So income elasticity of demand is equal to percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in income. Here percentage change in price is replaced by percentage change in income. It's as simple as that, right? और उसी को अपन क्या बोलते हैं? Income elasticity of demand. So now they have categorized two items. One is called normal goods, one is inferior goods. So now they are talking about something called normal goods, and there is something called inferior goods. Income elasticity or demand of normal goods is positive. But generally what they're saying, if your income rises, you'll tend to buy normal goods more. अगर आपका income बढ़ता तो ऐसा नहीं कि you buy more of rice, more of onion. Those are inferior goods, right? और उसका बोलते क्या कि income effect is negative. They are talking about something called income effect. So generally when your income rises, you don't buy more of inferior goods, rather you buy more of normal goods. Now you'll say, sir, if my income, again the same example, if my salary was 10,000, I was spending rupees 100 on purchase of onion. Even if my salary becomes 1 lakh, still my demand for onion is not going down. Still you'll say, sir, I'm buying 100 rupees of onion every month. So where is the demand going down? Look at the percentage of income which you are spending. In that sense, I'm saying earlier you were spending 1% consumption of inferior goods. Now you're spending only 0.1%. In that sense, I am saying that income effect of inferior goods is negative whereas income effect of normal goods is positive. So if your income rises, consumption of normal goods increases and consumption of inferior goods decreases, right? In relative terms. So earlier you were spending 1% of your income on consumption of this inferior good. Now you are spending only 0.1%. एब्सोल्यूट सेंस में तो आपको ज्यादा चेंज नहीं दिखाई पड़ रहा है. ऐसा नहीं कि सैलरी 1 लाख हो जाएगा तो आप ऑन 50 रुपए का कंज्यूम करोगे. आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट. But as a proportion of your income, now you're spending less on consumption of inferior goods. So what is most important for you to understand here is that normal goods, and they'll ask such questions maybe in the exam also. Generally, what we say that normal goods have positive income effect, whereas what are inferior goods? Inferior goods have negative income effect. Okay, now moving on to something called cross price elasticity of demand. Now I am discussing cross price elasticity of demand. Cross price elasticity of demand. Remember we discussed something called related goods. So I am going to discuss all those related goods here. So elasticity of demand is equal to percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price of related good. Related goods could be your substitute or it could be complementary. Now take the example of tea and sugar. Sugar and tea rather. So if price of sugar is rising, demand for tea is falling. So related good में अगर मैंने बोल दिया यहाँ पे ये है मेरा sugar and this is tea. So when price of sugar is rising, demand for tea is falling. Your elasticity of demand is negative. What does it mean? So cross price elasticity of demand, when it is negative, it means what? These are complementary goods. These are complementary goods. And let's take the example of coffee and tea. If price of coffee is rising, demand for tea will go up. See here, elasticity of demand will be positive. What it means? It means these are substitute goods. Remember, later on they'll talk about substitution effect. They'll talk about substitution effect. And remember, substitution effect is always positive. Why? Because if price of substitute good rises, so let's say you have coffee and tea. So when price of your substitute good rises, your demand for your own product is going to go up. Whenever the price of substitute rises, demand for main product is going to go up. Now, the best way to understand these things is I generally classify into two parts: your main good and then substitute. Then for complementary, this is for substitute. And this is complementary. So what I'll write, main good, and this is my complementary. Here we have tea and coffee. Complementary is sugar, my main good is tea. So when price of substitute rises, demand for main good increases. When price of complementary rises, demand for main good decreases. This will help you in understanding the part. So see here what is happening. They have a direct relationship. So substitution effect is always positive. Complementary effect is always negative. So if the question says, this is positive, sorry. So if the question says cross price elasticity of demand, cross price elasticity of demand is positive, immediately you should infer that these are substitute goods. And if they say cross price elasticity of demand is negative, immediately you can infer that these are complementary goods. Make sense? Now, how do we calculate elasticity? So let's do a question. Elasticity of demand, what I said, elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Now the question is, how do you calculate this percentage change in Q? Now according to your formula, it is Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1 into 100. This is what you have done in class 12. And this is how you are going to do it. Right now also, I'm doing the same method just to make you understand how we have derived the formula. But rather what I'll say here, I'll take the average. Q1 plus Q2 by 2, and here also I'll not take P1, I'll take P1 plus P2 by 2. And for calculation purpose, remember it is average, not the initial figure. Now my purpose is to do this, do this illustration is to make you understand they have derived a formula here. Q2 minus Q1 is nothing but change in Q, right? This 100 gets cancelled, so you can write it like this: Q2 minus Q1 divided by P2 minus P1 into P1 by Q1. You can rearrange this equation. This Q2 minus Q1, I'll write it as delta Q. This P2 minus P1 is change in price multiplied by, I'm simply writing P by Q. But this P by Q is not initial P by Q, but it is average figure, right? Now this is the kind of formula they have given here also. You see, ये formula कुछ ऐसा ही लिखा हुआ है. EAT is equal to what? Delta Q by delta P multiplied by P0 upon Q0. So this is not a new formula, but rather it is the same formula, right? Remember, this delta Q by delta P is slope of demand function. This is called slope of demand function, right? Now somebody will say here, sir, slope क्या होता है? Again, through mathematics, you will say slope की delta y by delta x. नहीं रजत परमार?
Yes, sir.
But here it is coming delta x by delta y, right? I'll make you understand कि ऐसा क्यों चल रहा है, उसका भी रीजन आपको अभी थोड़ी देर में बताता हूँ, right? So what is important for you to understand here is this ED is nothing but delta Q by delta P multiplied by P by Q. Okay, let's do a question. The question says this is the demand function, right? आप देखो demand function कैसा दिया हुआ है? Demand function दिया हुआ quantity demanded of gas, right? This is quantity demanded of gas. Solin is equal to 1,38,500 minus 12,500 into P gas. थोड़ा सा मैथमेटिक्स आ गया यहाँ पे. थोड़ा सा मैथमेटिक्स क्यों आएगा? Because this is Q and this is P. स्ट्रेट लाइन का इक्वेशन होता है y is equal to mx plus c, where m is your slope, this is x variable and this is y variable. अब आप देखो कि ये जो इक्वेशन है वो किस में है बच्चे? ये y is equal to mx plus 3 पे नहीं है. This q is x here, right? Okay, so I was discussing this question. Now this is my equation. QD gas is equal to 1,38,500 minus this, right? Now if you remember, what is my elasticity of demand? Delta Q by delta P into P by Q. Now I want to calculate elasticity of demand. सबसे पहले क्या चाहिए मेरे को कि अगर मेरे को स्लोप मिल जाए, डेल्टा क्यू बाई डेल्टा पी मिल जाए. तो इस इक्वेशन से देखो आपको स्लोप पता चल रहा है. y is equal to mx plus c अगर हम करते हैं, so this is my intercept term 1,38,500. this is intercept c, यही तो मेरा intercept हो गया, right? This equation is looking like c minus mx, yes, c plus mx. What will be slope here? Slope is minus 12,500. ये slope कितना नजर आ रहा है आपको? minus 12,500. So here your delta q by delta p is nothing but माइनस 12,500। एक काम तो हो गया, आपको पता चल गया कि भाई डेल्टा क्यू बाई डेल्टा पी कितना है, this much. Rather, let me write down this entire question here. So what this says, quantity demanded for gas is equal to 1,38,500 minus 12,500 into price of gas, right? So your equation is like y is equal to mx plus c. अब यहाँ से मेरे को एक चीज क्लियर दिखाई पड़ रहा है कि what is my slope here? The slope is nothing but minus 12,500. And what is my equation? Delta q by delta p into p by q. ये delta q by delta p is nothing but my slope. And in this question, my slope is minus 12,500. Now the question is from where I am going to get P and Q. Look at the question. Calculate the price elasticity at a gasoline price of $3 per gallon. But the price of gas is given to you. This price when P is equal to 3. Can't you find out QD? This quantity demanded, simply substitute here. So 1,38,500 minus 12,500 into 3. And how much it is coming? Let's see from here only. 1,01,000. This is coming 1,01,000. Now P by Q में P I have got it. P is how much? 3. What is Q here? Q is 1,01,000. Just substitute all these values, you'll get elasticity of demand. And how much it is coming? If you see the question, it is coming minus 0.37.